Hello.
Hello. How's everyone doing today?
Yeah.
It's really late for you, isn't it?
It's 2 a.m., but I usually go to bed around 3:30 a.m. So it's the end of the day, but it's not late for me personally. Yeah.
That's so funny. I'm like the type of person that's in bed by 10 a.m. or 10 p.m. I'm like
10
I'm out,
a.m.
I'm done. No, I know, right?
Yeah.
10 p.m. I'm out, I'm done. I was up at I don't know, just after 6 this morning. So hi, welcome everybody. Oh yay, we've got people. All right, so just before we get started, I'm going to ask everyone who is not Lysander or myself just to have your mics muted. And we will get started in just a moment. It'll be a pretty simple process. I will be just asking some questions, getting to know your process, and just some really silly things. And then at the end, we'll have a quick Q&A in the chat so people can put their questions in there. And we'll read them out and go from there. So, Lysander, are you good to go? Are we ready?
Yeah, I've got iced tea. I'm prepared.
Yay! I've got my tea. I'm ready to go. So let's do that. So first of all, I want to say thank you for joining. Lysander, thank you for doing this. It's really fun. We haven't done an interview in a while. So this is a nice way to change it up. But first of all, do you want to just give like a quick introduction about yourself and maybe about the story that we're featuring on the server right now that you wrote?
Yeah, sure. I'm gonna turn 30 this year, which is wild. I'm a queer Australian artist, writer. I kind of describe myself as having a thumb in pretty much every creative pie. I don't really have self-control when it comes to pursuing different mediums, so I've dabbled a bit in pretty much everything. But definitely writing and digital art are my main two, and it usually comes down to some form of storytelling. I tend to peter out quicker on types of artistic mediums that don't translate very well into storytelling. And the book Lamb's Blood is I'm just gonna go to where my synopsis is written, because that's succinct and I am not succinct.
It's also 2 a.m. there, so
Yeah. So it's a fantasy romance sort of mystery erotic novel that is very much about exploring sexuality and neurodivergence through the lens of fantasy, and then also exploring sort of themes around restrictive, repressive, sexist cultures and ideas like virginity and the experience of virginity versus the concept of it, and things like that. And then also, just some good old-fashioned smut, because that's what inspired me to write. So
what we love. That's awesome. I love a good smut book. Those are my go-tos. But it sounds like yours also has a lot of very in-depth and detailed social issues. Maybe is that kind of?
I would say that that there are definitely a lot of themes that are explored in the book, but I think that more just sort of naturally emerges from my perspective as a writer, and
Right.
Whenever we tell stories, inevitably we're going to end up saying something. It's kind of impossible not to, because what we write is informed by what we think. So it the book isn't taking a lot of time to really hammer home points on specific social issues, but the story does explore those themes just through the way that the characters experience the world and each other.
That's really interesting, and it kind of leads me to my first question. Why or what inspired you to write this book?
Two things, both of them kind of embarrassing. So the first is I played Warhammer 40k Rogue Trader, which is a CRPG, like a Baldur's Gate kind of turn-based, character-driven role-playing game thing, and it has just some absolutely fantastic, like, space Regency era romance in it. That kind of put me on like a bit of a romance kick. I actually started writing fan fiction for it, and then I was like, I want to read more romance. I need more romance. And I got an audiobook service, and like just kind of typed in things that I like, and the word erotic, and it turns out that I'm in luck because I really like fairies, and there's a lot of erotic books about fairies currently. And
I
I
may have
kind
read a
of,
couple.
yeah, I kind of had a massive, like, hyperfixation, hypermanic episode induced, just kind of devoured all of A Court of Thorns and Roses as a series, and then, like, got to the end and kind of looked at myself and went, I didn't like that as much as I did in the moment. Like,
So fair.
especially the later books. The earlier books are a lot stronger to me, and I think that I disagree with a lot of what I would say is probably the common critiques among people who generally agree with me. I actually think that the books do a pretty good job of trying to tackle, certain issues around sexism and stuff. I just think that they kind of miss the mark in some areas because of like blind spots for the author. And yeah, I kind of got inspired from that, where I was like, man, I want to write something. And then I did. Basically.
That's cool. That's cool. And I like that the court books are something that I devoured too. And then I also had a lot of back and forth feelings about the whole thing. And I know it's like hugely debated in the book talk world and stuff like that. But I love that that was like an inspiration for you to write your own kind of thing.
I
And
completely stumbled into it as well. Like, it was just on the sort of front page. I've never book talked. And I like went to my friends. I was like, hey, like, have you heard of this thing? And they kind of laughed at me because, like, of course they've heard of it. Like, I've been living under a rock. But, yeah.
I love that. Have you read anything since then that's kind of been in the same genre and field that has really spoken to you,
I
and you haven't
have.
had such critique about?
Yeah, I definitely. I mean, I've read some things that are definitely way worse. Like I didn't finish reading. What's it called?
Throne
Throne
of
of
Glass.
Throne of the Fallen.
Oh,
God, Throne of the Fallen. I think it's called Throne of the Fallen. It's the like one about the seven deadly sins guys.
oh,
It it impressed me more in the beginning because it did a really good job of setting up like what court intrigue would actually feel like, which I think is one of my main criticisms of A Court of Thorns and Roses is there's actually no courts happening really at any point.
mm,
In the first book, the court is two guys, and like anyway. So yeah, I didn't finish that because it just sort of bored me by the end. The Cruel Prince series, like, I mean, I'm just saying things that everybody already knows, but like that was, despite being young adult, absolutely fantastic. It just like completely hit the nail on the head as far as what I think the Fae should be like in like a fictional setting, as well as like having an active protagonist who is a complete mess, which I love. So yeah, I really enjoyed The Cruel Prince, and yeah, I've been kind of working my way through different. It's like a little bit of a different genre, but I'm in reading the Ornithologist's Field Guide to Love at the moment,
I've
which is,
heard good things.
yeah, it's fantastic. It's absolutely hilarious. It's like a comedy of manners, sort of. It was pitched to me as the Terry Pratchett of romantasy, and I kind of agree. I think,
Okay.
like with that, as it's sort of like definitely, and this is why I want you that I go on tangents, but like something about comedy and satire of a genre for me that's very important is that the satire has to come from a place of like appreciation. Like, I mean, it doesn't have to if it's a bad thing. You can satirize something that's bad, but like, you know, if you're going to satirize something that I like, I would rather you do it from like a place of appreciation where we're all kind of nodding in agreement, and it's like, yeah, isn't this funny, but also, you know, isn't it good also? And I think it does a really good job of that.
I love that. Definitely adding that to my list. And like Cruel Prince, I know, and I'm gonna call her out. RRK is here. She's one of the mods on the server, and I know that's a book that she really enjoys. And I've started reading it. I haven't finished yet, but I've heard things about it. Good thing.
If I have any complaints about it, it's that like right up until the, you know, obviously the last book, like the first two books both just end on massive cliffhangers, which I think is very rude and you shouldn't do that, but like I'll allow it because it's a really good story. And also it was already, I would have died if it wasn't like already available to me when I got up to that point. I don't know how you would have managed if the book hadn't been published yet for you to immediately keep reading.
I love a good cliffhanger. You know, I love a good cliffhanger. I also love a good tangent, so don't ever apologize for that. We love tangents here. But I love a good cliffhanger. I love a book that makes me just want to cry and scream and throw it and get so mad at it and then like ruminate on it for a really long time. Yeah, RRK says she loves that series and tangents. So we are all in we're in agreement here. Okay, so
where are we doing chat? Are we doing the the chat of the
yes. Oh, sorry. Yeah. So we have a little chat. Yeah, we will sometimes throw random comments in there. And I just want to say thank you for everyone who's here and everyone who's still joining and whatnot. This is awesome. So Lysander, how long have you been into writing or actively writing?
It's one of the things that I've been into since I was quite little. I think the first thing I ever wanted to be was an author at the age of like 8. And my mum, being as autistic as I am, kind of took that a little bit too seriously and gave me a bit too much of a taste of the reality of being an author, and I very quickly backpedaled away from it. It kind of went, oh, that's terrifying, like, you know, which you know, like we're all kind of figuring ourselves out. But she was always my mum's always been very supportive of me, just like, you know, it was a bit overwhelming when she was kind of talking about publishers and stuff, and I just kind of thought that I'd write a book and be famous, and that would just be, you know, I was 8. Yeah, an author and an artist was kind of what I wanted to be. And then during high school, I got really into game design, sort of as a realization that it was a combination of the different things that I really liked, as sort of storytelling, but then also art at the same time, and that's what I did at uni. And video games are awful to make because you have to do all of it. You have to do everything, especially if you're doing it by yourself. You have to be a writer, and you have to be an artist and a programmer and a 3D, you know, like yada yada. You have to do everything, or you have to rely on other people, even worse. So yeah, kind of fell off of games. Also, it's a horrible industry. I would encourage anybody interested in game design to not do that unless you want to do it as a hobby, in which case it's a great hobby. Like, making games is an awesome thing, and you should make messy and terrible and bad games for fun, but as a career it's bad. Yeah,
a good creative outlet, but not necessarily, you know, a great structure for a job long term.
Yeah, and I was also lucky that the degree that I did was very focused on the independent game space in Melbourne, which meant that it was a lot of about like the art side of things and what makes an interesting video game and stuff like that, as opposed to how to actually succeed in the game industry, like as a job, which at first, you know, kind of felt like a little bit like, oh, but it didn't prepare me to do this as a job. But then later I kind of went, well, this was actually more valuable because at least I learned something interesting about the philosophy of making a good game as opposed to learning a bunch of tools that are going to be outdated anyway. And
And were
also,
you
it meant that I didn't
sorry.
get a job in games, which was good, because you don't want to do that.
And were you able to like take stuff from what you learned via gaming and the whole process and put it into writing at all?
Absolutely. I absolutely find that being good, the more things that you are interested in and that you get interested in, the more good and interesting you can do everything else. Like, because games, as a form of storytelling, have to um, you have to explain things to the player without them realizing that they're having things explained to them, like, tutorializing how to play the game in a way that makes them feel like they just naturally know how to do it. And a lot of that translates very well into how to do exposition in a book in a way that doesn't make the reader feel like they're just reading a bunch of exposition.
Or a
um,
showing, not telling kind of thing?
yeah, not even just showing, not telling, because I do think that to a degree there should be an amount of telling in stories, um, but playing the showing and telling off of each other so that the reader is left with like an interesting, look into how the character sees things and how the world is, and like, yeah, but yeah, definitely. I mean, I also, if you read my work, first of all, thank you, but then also, secondly, you're free to tell me that I exposit too much, and that I'm full of shit. Am I allowed to swear in the 18 plus channel?
Yeah, that's fine. That's totally fine.
Yeah, like, you're allowed to tell me that I'm bad at it, but I definitely think that there's a lot about storytelling in games that translates well into other mediums. It's a very text light medium. You don't get to say much, so you have to make what you say really count. Yeah.
And I imagine it probably helps also with like world building because that's such a huge part of gaming and also of writing.
I don't know if I agree with that one.
No, that's
Mostly
fine. I don't
just
know much about gaming, so that's
no, like that's absolutely fine. Like, honestly, I think a lot of people who make games make this mistake as well, but games are not a very good medium for expressing complicated worlds. Unless you're a massive studio and you can like really, um really like go all into it. And a lot of the time, I think that what games do absolutely best, especially on like a smaller scale, is give you like a really detailed slice, like it's like slice of life type thing, where it's just like um, very very packed in and zoomed into like a single moment or idea. And like to a degree, there's a lot to do with like how to fit the world building into that. But in terms of whether or not you're good at world building, I don't think necessarily that affects whether or not you're good at making a good video game. I think a video game can kind of shine without good world building because ultimately what it needs to do is feel fun to play. Um, but, I slightly
yeah.
digress.
No, that makes sense, and it's good. I like hearing different people's perspective. Like I said, I have zero gaming perspective, so I'm totally just speculating when I say that. But I think that makes a lot of sense because I mean, gaming, like you said, unless you're coming from a big studio, you don't necessarily need to do like a huge world building process to make the gaming interesting. And I'm thinking about like a game that I play on my phone has no world building really. So yeah, that makes sense, and um, I really like that perspective. So thank you. Um, so you were saying that you have wanted to be a writer or have been writing since maybe you were 8. What are some or who are some writers that kind of inspired you to keep going on this journey?
Um, well, I mean, the journey kind of took a big break up until recently. So, like, when I was very little, it was my favorite book was The Hobbit, which my dad used to read to me, and he did the voices. So, of course, it was my favorite book. Um, and I think he read me Lord of the Rings as well, but I might not have been born yet, so I don't remember it. Um, but yeah, like The Hobbit and Watership Down were my sort of big stories that I was super into, and then I unfortunately hit the like age of 12, 13 Harry Potter obsession, which actually killed my ability to read new books because I hyper focused on them so hard. I just reread Harry Potter over and over again. It was a waste of my life that I regret sorely. But it kind of just I stopped reading new things, and then I hit the other thing, which I think a lot of people do. It's just sort of you get older and you realize you suddenly can't read anymore. Like you try and sit down and read a book, and it just doesn't work. And I was stuck in that for like 10 years. I kind of wrote myself off as like, oh, well, I can't read anymore. So like as much as, I could write essays about the things that are an issue with the Court of Thorns and Roses, it made me read books again. So like that's kind of big as a positive. But like during that time I kept doing storytelling. Mostly through like tabletop gaming and tabletop role playing, D&D, World of Darkness, Exalted, L5R, just like different role playing games. And I've always found that probably is my favorite method of storytelling, is sort of interactive, collaborative storytelling. Not necessarily with the rules and structure, that's less important to me. As long as everybody's good at telling a story, I think you could probably do away with a lot of the rules and structure. Like dice are fun, but that's not what makes me happy. But yeah, it was kind of a big gap, and then I just sort of it became a hyperfixation again, and through that I became able to read again, and then I became able to write again. And now I've written a whole book, which is
amazing.
I did write 3/4 of a book during lockdown during the pandemic. That was another like time when I but I wasn't reading at the time. I just started writing a book, and it wasn't very good. And I couldn't finish it because I had no idea what I was doing. It was kind of just like a lockdown hobby thing. Anyway.
A good way to like spend your time during lockdown, and like a good way to be creative, I imagine. I find it interesting. I also had like a huge gap in my reading time. Like I was also obsessed with the Harry Potter books when I was young, and then I had a big gap. And I'm 34, so when I got back into reading, it was like prime Twilight. Twilight came out. People were obsessed with it, and that's what got me back into reading. And I was like, oh, there's a whole thing of romance going on here. So
if you're 34, because I remember Twilight coming out, and that was like I was like 16, I swear, when Twilight came out. So you would have had to have also been like 20. So it couldn't have been that big of a, or am I?
It was. I remember. I was behind on the first book, but when the last book came out, was it Breaking Dawn? I can't even remember now.
Something like that.
I remember going to the midnight opening of what was then Chapters, at like a big bookstore. I remember going to the midnight opening or release of that book. It was like the hugest thing. I don't even know if they do those anymore, like midnight openings. But it was a huge thing. It was really, really exciting. So I probably was behind on the first couple books. But definitely came in on the last one.
That makes sense. I mean, like I also read Twilight, and I think that was like me being a teenager and kind of going like, I don't know what to do with myself. I need to read something that like is romance, and might also have been the reason that I didn't read a lot of romance for a while, because it's just. It bores me when I can tell what the end of a book is supposed to be, and then we just have to get there. And that's kind of how Twilight felt, and especially New Moon, the second book, is a crime. Nothing happens in it the entire time.
It's definitely one that you could skip over and not miss anything in that entire book.
Yeah, like it's just a nothing book.
It's just kind of there. But speaking of books then, so what if you had to pick, if you had to pick one, what is your favorite book?
I would say probably Watership Down still.
Okay.
I think it's just beautiful. It's like the prose is lovely, the world building in Watership Down, like the sort of rabbit culture, society, and theology that they have is just like that's what made me want to not just build worlds, but like build characters' understandings of worlds, right? Like, because it's one thing to say these are the gods of this universe, and it's another thing to say like this is what people think the gods of this universe are and why. You know, like how they rationalize things through theology, regardless of how much of that is actually true. So yeah, I love Watership Down. Great book, and not sad. Like everybody says, it's sad. It's not. It's mostly very happy.
Yeah, I think that's like my only kind of reference to it is that I remember it being a sad book, but I don't remember if I've actually ever read it or if it's just what I've heard from people. So maybe
like
I'll have to add it to my list.
the movie is incomprehensible if you haven't read the book. It's like it's lovely animation, but it's like you have no idea what's going on. And like, I guess I will admit a lot of rabbits die in the book very early on, but like in the same way as like you have a disaster at the start of the book, it sets up the main characters, and then they go on a journey. It's like it's the same thing, but it's rabbits instead of people. And I guess that's too much for some people, but like for me, it's the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. And it obviously, it's I think it's probably considered a classic at this point. I don't know, but
Probably it's
it's
quite
one
old.
that yeah, it's one that a lot of people have read and enjoyed and can keep going. So obviously, it stands to the test of time, which is what we like in a good book.
They keep making bad adaptations of it.
That's really unfortunate. They have to kind of stop doing that with books. But speaking of books that stand the test of time, let's talk about Lamb's Blood. What tells about your characters, like a couple of the main ones, and what you do or do not like about them?
Yeah, for sure. It's difficult to talk about a lot of the characters because it's sort of meant to be a mystery, and I don't know how much I'm going to talk about the later parts of the books. I probably just will end up doing it in the next 2 minutes because that's how much time we've got left.
Oh, we got a bit longer. It's like we're not strict for time, but if you need to leave, that's totally fine.
No, I don't. I just don't want to like keep you long. But the main character Aneska is like an incredibly sheltered, very autistic coded like young girl living on an estate that is sort of in the middle of an endless forest. And she's known the same like 100 or so people her entire life. And as far as she's aware, there's nothing beyond that. And she's incredibly naive, but she's not stupid. And I have tried very hard to write her in a way that makes her seem intelligent, despite the fact that her family have deliberately restricted her ability to understand the world around her. So she doesn't really, have an understanding of romance. She has absolutely no clue what sex is. She's not allowed to. And so she has this, very restrictive worldview. And then she meets Thorn, who is a member of like, just like, how to describe this in a way that he's like a hunter of the evil things that like want to kill the people in the estate. Sorry, we have hit the point in the night where I become less succinct. I'm really selling this to you. He's like a hunter. And he is, supposed to protect the people in the estate. He's not supposed to be seen or interact with them, and he's definitely not supposed to interact with her. But she meets him, and meeting him kind of makes her begin to, first of all, have romantic feelings for the first time, but then, like, second of all, question all of the sort of rules and establishments and, like, things around her, and sort of why it's all set up the way that it is. Yeah.
That sounds, yeah, that's really interesting. I like the main
I should have just
character.
read the blurb that I wrote.
It's okay. No, you did great. You did great. But if you were able to pick one message that you want your story to convey to its reader, what would that be?
Um,
Or is there one? There doesn't have to be one.
it's interesting. I think as an author, I have a lot to say, but it's mostly vibes.
Mm.
I guess if I have one message, it would be um, that no, no, I can't answer that question. That's too
That's
difficult.
okay. You don't have to answer that. That's totally fine. So let's kind of move on to a bit of your process. Like, what kind of atmosphere do you like to write in? Do you have a structure of where and when, or is it just whenever and
Um,
wherever?
it's mostly whenever, wherever. Like usually, it's at my desk at home listening to music. I have a playlist. It's incomprehensibly weird. Um,
Okay,
as
name
is my
one song on your playlist. One
one
song.
song on my playlist. Strange Days by I've forgotten the name of the artist. Um, Strange Days. Hang on, let me just pick a different song because Domesticated Animals by Queens of the Stone Age.
Love it.
There we go.
Okay,
That's the
everyone
song.
listen.
Hmm?
So sorry, go ahead.
Well, listen to the song, right? Okay, yeah.
Listen to the song.
Um, Sometimes write on my phone because I'm on a bus and I have thoughts and need to get them out. Um, it's difficult to, say that I have a process given that I wrote this mostly while having a hypomanic episode originally. So I was kind of just writing constantly.
Right.
But I would say if there's any kind of structure, it's that I tend to write in sort of chapter segments, and then I send those segments to my boyfriend so that he can give me some feedback on it. And that's like the little treat that I get, like that makes me write the next bit because I want him to comment on the next bit. Um,
Oh,
and that sort of, you know, makes it possible to feel like I'm being validated as I'm writing, is having someone like follow that process with me as I'm writing it. Um, because otherwise I would just explode from the amount of like not being able to vicariously experience my own work through someone else, which I think probably comes from the role playing. Like that's what role play is, right? You do a little bit and then they do a little bit and then so that's what I kind of that's my main structural element that makes it all work for me is having someone who will stop and read what I wrote and then tell me some thoughts on it. Usually just brief thoughts, but like just being acknowledged in any way is
yeah.
very validating for an extrovert like myself.
Yeah, no, I totally get it. I love reading people's works. Like right now, I'm in the middle of reading RRK's story, and I will text her, or when we're calling each other, I will give her all my theories, like conspiracy theories on the book, and she can't say anything. Obviously, she doesn't want to give anything away. But I think having that communication with somebody is really fun because I'm getting a lot out of it too as the reader, um, getting that interaction with the writer because we often don't get that. And I think it's really special to be able to be a part of, heart you, be a part of the experience. I really, and I'm sure your boyfriend gets satisfaction out of being able to be a part of that. It's something that you enjoy and is creative. And I think that's really fantastic that you have that connection and are able to bond over this in a way. That's really cool.
Absolutely. I think like that's probably I guess I shouldn't skip ahead, but like if I have to say what my favorite thing about Quill and Pen is, it would be that it would be the experience of beta reading people's work and like not just experiencing them sort of giving me their play by play reaction to my work, but also giving someone else my play by play reaction to their work,
Mhm.
because like we're a social species and doing things even though reading is something you do by yourself, like that's why people have book clubs, it's like
Mhm.
being able to socialize over it is just way more fun. And
Yeah.
this server has given me an outlet for that, where I just sort of didn't have that previously.
And I love that.
Beyond,
And
yeah,
you've also been like a very active person in the server, and you think we've seen like you've given a lot of people advice and help, and we love that. We love when people integrate themselves in, and you're really great at helping people out, which we love. So thank you for that.
hopefully it's good advice.
Yeah.
I, um, I will never assume that I am only giving good advice, but I do like to give it. No, yeah, I love engaging with people, and yeah, I mean, like I'm a teacher as well, so kind of just it becomes habitual to a certain extent. When someone asks a question, I immediately just start formulating an answer to that question.
I love that. What do you teach?
I teach art mostly, digital
Oh,
art.
so cool.
Kind of like a little bit of everything. It's sort of like whatever the client's project or focus is on, but usually if they're being given to me as a client by the company, then it's because digital art is their focus.
Right. It's so cool. So, before we wrap up, I want to open it up to anyone in the chat, anyone who's here, who wants to throw some questions at Lysander or any thoughts that you have. Feel free to type now while we just chat a little bit more. I can see someone's typing. But Lysander, would you say that this piece in any way has challenged you as a person, as a writer, in any aspect?
Absolutely, I think I'm very good at coming up with interesting openings to stories and plot setups. And then I had to figure out how I was going to end it. And I will say the difference between this and the book I didn't finish in lockdown is that I got about 30% of the way through writing it, and ran out of, like, the things that I knew for certain I wanted there to be, and kind of went, I should just stop and write like a loose plan. And, like, it was just like a bullet point list of some ideas. Like, it wasn't anything super concrete, and I didn't even stick to it mostly, but just having that as something to work towards, yeah, sort of got me over that hump of having to, bring the plot around. And then also just, I would say, writing, a romance of this kind of genre, and trying to make sure that the main character, like the protagonist, is active and is solving the problems herself. Because I think, it's kind of a reasonable part of a lot of romantic fantasies is to have somebody cool and capable who looks after you. Um,
Right. Hmm.
and to be rescued is like it's an undeniable desire, right? But then I kind of went up against that, and I was like, well, she can be rescued, I guess, at times, but I want to make sure that she isn't just being rescued. I want to make sure that she is actually, an active character who is solving things and doing things herself, and sort of rewriting one of the sort of main plot beats at sort of 2/3 into the book, completely from what I originally wrote down in my little bullet point thing, so that it was her solving a problem instead of her being rescued from a problem, which is one of those sort of, I guess, put your money where your mouth is things, where it's sort of like you have all of these feminist and, progressive opinions, and then you kind of realize as you're writing that you're sort of writing your implicit biases, um, and that you have to, even though it's difficult and it makes the writing harder, you have to stop and think, well, how can I write this better? And actually challenge the things that I keep saying we need to challenge.
Yeah, that awareness is really important, and I think it's hard to put into something that's creative because, like you said, we do have our biases and our way we're used to stories going. And I think I remember seeing something about how in a lot of movies, it's always the woman asking the man, "What do we do now?"
Mm.
And it's like the man solving the problems, and it was like a ridiculous statistics of women asking men that in movies. So I like that you were aware of that and you had to change that and it made it harder. But but you were aware and you did it, and that's really, really cool. And as a woman, I want to say thank you. 'Cause that's awesome.
It was also like the one part of the book that I wrote and then gave to one of my other friends who was sort of reading it for me, and he was like, "So I could tell you hated writing this. Like I could tell that like up until this point the writing was effortless for you, and then like when you wrote, like were you unhappy as you were writing this because it shows because you are over describing everything. Like the prose became so dense I had to go and like completely, you know, it's meant to be like an action scene. You want short punchy sentences, right? And like I sort of written he keeps accusing me of writing Gorman Ghast, which is a good book. It's a really good book, but it is purposefully obtuse. And so, yeah, I guess it showed that I didn't enjoy writing it the first time around, but then now that I've, you know, gone back and rewritten it, like with, you know, having something to go off of, I've written what I think is actually quite a good scene. So it's sort of like, yeah, if you have something that you don't want to write in your first draft, just do a bad job of it, because you can always go back and change it. But like, you know, having a bad job of it is going to give you a structure for writing a better one. Yeah,
That's amazing. That's awesome. Thank you for sharing that and like the struggles that you've gone through with writing this story and whatnot. We do have a question, yay, from Yet Pride, and it says, if and hopefully when you publish a novel, would you include your art to illustrate some of the scenes?
I've actually gone back and forth on this. I think like most of the color art, aside from the fact that my art style is kind of a little bit too inconsistent for illustrating like a book, I think. Um, I want to give the reader, especially because it's a romance, I want to give the opportunity for the reader to sort of come up with their own version of what these men look like. I think that that's, you know, an important flexibility that, like, it's one of the strengths of books, actually, is that you can describe things very specifically, but there's going to be room for people to interpret it in a way that, you know, plays to what they like. And as soon as you give someone a visual, you are sort of limiting that imaginative space. So I think to a degree, I would maybe be reluctant to put them in the book. I've thought about doing just sort of like little, sort of like smaller black and white illustrations. And I don't know, if I get super famous and everybody loves me, I'll release like an art book or something. But yeah, probably I wouldn't illustrate the book just because I want to leave that space for people.
That's yeah, that I like. I mean, I think I really enjoy like the little bits of art in a book, but also I imagine it's hard to tie it all in together if that's not what you're wanting. But on that note, last question: will there be a sequel to your book, or is it a one-stop shop?
It is actually meant to be a trilogy. I'm currently about 30% of the way through writing my first draft of the sequel. Um, the first book is very much focused on the events that are taking place, and I don't really slow down to let the characters do a lot of processing of emotions, because I think that that can kind of, that's another thing that really bothers me or annoyed me eventually about A Court of Thorns and Roses, is I was just like tired of hearing about the trauma. It's
Right.
like, stop telling me what happened. I know, I was there. You know, just let it inform your actions and, you know, the way that your character behaves, and I will assume that you're traumatized. I don't need you to reiterate it for me constantly. But the second book is a lot more of the character kind of unpacking the effect that the first book has had on her, and then the third book is something else. Yeah.
Spirit. I love that. So you guys all heard it here. There will be more. So go and read Lamb's Blood, because it is in Story of the Month. And yeah, I just want to say thank you so much, Lysander. This has been a really interesting and fun interview to do. And you've been such a good guest. So thank you so much for that.
Thank you.
And everyone go read it. And I want to say thank you for everyone who joined us today. And I really appreciate all of you coming, and I appreciate the support of Story of the Month. Yeah, any final words, Lysander, before we wrap up?
No, I think I did a good job of representing myself. I think I did a terrible job of representing my book.
No,
Um,
I'm
when
intrigued. So I think you
asked.
did a great job. I am very intrigued.
Which I think is just because, my mind is full of all of the book, and so you ask me to say something about it, and my mind tries to say the entire book out loud at once, which is
It just shows
probably
passion.
an
That's
experience that other people can relate to somewhat. But yeah, this has been quite fun.
absolutely. And I just want to say, yeah, thank you so much. And we're going to be posting this on YouTube in the next couple days. So and we'll share that link with everyone here as well. And yeah, thank you everyone for joining. And I can't wait to see you all next time. Amazing. All right.
Hopefully, there's a next
Everyone
time.
have a great, there will be a next time. Everyone have a great rest of your day. And Lysander, go get some sleep.
Yeah, I'm gonna go to bed. Thank you very much for having me.
Thank you. All right. Take care.